Hello my friends, hello my colleagues. I would like to teach you medicine, I would like to teach it for free. The first lesson that we will start is about the hypoxia. And there are 5 types of hypoxia. External hypoxia, like hypoxic hypoxia, when we have the lower level of oxygen in the environment. The second one, we remember about the respiratory system, from nose and oral cavity up to the lungs. It will be respiratory hypoxia. The third part of the way is circulatory system. If we have some brokenness on this level, we have circulatory hypoxia. We remember that in the blood we have erythrocytes. And if something will be wrong with erythrocytes, like anemia or something changes in hemoglobin state, it will be anemic hypoxia. And finally, we'll have the brokenness on the level of tissue. In case of the patient may receive some poison, it will be the tissue hypoxia or histotoxic hypoxia. All these 5 stages, if we have the brokenness on each of these 5 stages, will lead to the hypoxia in general. Because what the main reason of oxygen? We need to consume the oxygen for oxygen phosphorylation. During the aerobicglicolisis, we finally receive 36 ATP, adenosine triphosphate. If there will not be an oxygen, glycolysis will follow through anaerobic glycolysis, and there will be only just 2 molecules of ATP and lactic acid. It makes the pH lower, it makes the acidify of our body. All of our metabolic process become bad. So, if we speak about hypoxic hypoxia, when in environment we don't have enough oxygen, or during the operation, in operation theater, during our operation process, if the anesthesiologist make the VO2 on the ventilator not enough. What is VO2? VO2, it's like the concentration of oxygen that has in our gas that comes to the patient's body through the intubation tube. And if it's the level of VO2, this concentration of oxygen, is not enough for the patient, it will be also hypoxic hypoxia. And the patient will not receive the proper level of oxygen. I'm sorry, like water balance. So if we will have the lower level in the very beginning of this way, we'll have the lower level in each of this part. The next one, respiratory hypoxia. Respiratory hypoxia, it's when we have the brokenness on the level of the nose and mouth up to the lungs. How we will breathe? Our central nervous system create electrical impulses to the muscles, respiratory muscles. If we will have some brokenness on the central nervous system, there will be the central respiratory hypoxia. You remember the 3 parts, the 3 main parts of anesthesia: hypnotic drugs, opioid drugs, and also muscular relaxant. 3 main parts. And if we give the patient these 3 main parts of general anesthesia, the central nervous system of the patient can't create this electric impulse because the patient is sleeping. And if the intubational tube will not connect to the ventilator, the patient can't maintain his own breath because of the central nervous system, because the anesthesiologist shut down his brain. And it will be the central respiratory hypoxia because of the central nervous system is shut down. The second type of respiratory hypoxia is when on the track from nose and oral cavity up to the alveoli is some, not damage, but some structure that blocks this way. It can be 2 types. The block can be on the way from the nose and oral cavity up to the alveoli, or it can be some structure, some additional tissue can be besides this way and construct the way from the outside. If the patient is intubated and the sputum collect in this intubational tube, the oxygen can't come to the lung because the tube is blocked by the sputum. It will be respiratory hypoxia. But the ventilation respiratory hypoxia, you can't ventilate properly the patient. You have to connect to vacuum to evacuate the sputum from the intubational tube. Another example. Your patient has an allergy, severe allergy for example, like a tongue, becomes bigger, 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 and the airway tracts close. The patient can't breathe because the airway tracts is blocked by the tongue. What's the next level? Larynx. When the patient inhale the coin, a baby, inhale the coin, and the coin goes on the larynx, and larynx is blocked. It also will be respiratory hypoxia, ventilation respiratory hypoxia. You can't ventilate properly. Oxygen and air can't go to the alveoli. Bronchitis, some sputum in bronchi. It also will block the oxygen flow, but sometimes can be additional tissue outside of this tract. Actually, it's really happened in case of tumors, cancer tumors from the outside, when the trachea construct, or aortic aneurysm, that block the left bronchi. Alveoli is the final destination of the oxygen in respiratory system. The one wall of cells has alveoli, and also one wall of cells has capillaries. And it's like this: air and blood. If there will be some inflammation, pulmonary inflammation, like pneumonia, the wall between alveoli and capillaries become bigger. It's not so small like it be. And oxygen can't go through this wall, can't go to the blood. SpO2 pulse oximeter we put on the finger. In case of pneumonia, the alveoli on the level of lungs is blocked because of the inflammation. What's five signs of inflammation? Tumor, color, dolor, rubor, funcția lesa. Tumor. Why is tumor happened during the inflammation? Because of the inflammation components. Histamine, for example, will become edema. And because of this, during the pneumonia, there will be the edema of alveoli and the alveoli wall. The oxygen can't go through this wall to the blood. And finally, when you put the pulse oximeter on your patient's finger, there will be no oxygen or low level of oxygen because the alveoli is in the edema state and oxygen can't go through the lungs to the blood. All of this was respiratory hypoxia, when the damage was on the level from the nose and oral cavity up to the alveoli. What's next? Circulatory system. The main goal of circulatory system is to deliver the oxygenated blood to the tissue. There are two main functions of the circulatory system: to maintain the proper level of blood pressure, arterial blood pressure, and also to maintain the proper level of cardiac output. If you speak about the medium arterial blood pressure, it will be more than 60 millimeters high gram. Of course, we have systolic and diastolic level, but in medicine, like anesthesiologist, we will look at the medium arterial blood pressure. Why? To maintain the proper level of metabolism of the tissue. So the first huge part of working of circulatory system is arterial blood pressure, and the second one is cardiac output. Cardiac output, that means that the human heart has to pump the proper level of the blood, and in normal it's from 4 up to 6 liters per minute for 1 minute. Just imagine. If the heart can't maintain the proper level of these liters per minute, the tissue will not receive the proper level of oxygen, because there will no enough blood, oxygenated blood goes through the tissue, and it will lead also to hypoxia. If there are some states that have lower cardiac output, atrioventricular blocks, when the heart rate it's not high, it's low, the normal rate of cardiac output is from 4 up to 6 liters per minute. It maintains on the proper level of heart rate from 60 beats per minute up to 95 beats per minute. It's normal sinus rhythm. It's normal sinus rhythm. If there will be some changes in sinus rhythm, and it will be less than 60, like 40, it will be not enough for cardiac output. And there will be circulatory hypoxia. Let's imagine that our patient is healthy on his respiratory system, and there is enough oxygen in the environment, and also his circulatory system is very good. But if the patient is anemic, if there are no good level of erythrocytes, or the state of hemoglobin is not very good, the heart can pump like from 4 up to 6 liters per minute. But if there will be no erythrocytes, there also will be hypoxic in the tissue. If you see in your patient the lower level of erythrocytes, you have to add more erythrocytes, more blood. What will be if you will not give a blood transfusion in this patient? If you see the anemia in the patient, there will be low level of oxygen in tissue. If there will be no oxygen, the Anaerobicglicolisis will start, increase the lactic acid, also will lead to brokenness, the damage of the cells, and finally, the brain will shut down. Our brain do not have the resources, energy resources, additional energy resources, and it continue consume the oxygen from the blood. If the blood will stop going to the brain, in 5 seconds, the central nervous system will shut down. If you will not start the CPR and blood will not go to the patient's brain, the brain will die in 5 minutes. It's real. Because of this, when you see the patient is like lying down, first of all, you have to take his pulse. You have to see if there's good enough circulation in the brain. If it's not, you have to start CPR. You have to pump the heart from outside of the chest and feel the pulsation of the carotid arteries. It will maintain the proper level of circulation in the blood, on the patient's brain, and you will save the patient. If there will be no pulsation on carotid arteries, the patient's brain will die in 5 minutes, unfortunately, irreversibly. So, remember about this. Remember the role of oxygen. Remember that the patient's life in your hands. If the patient's brain is in danger in case of hypoxia, you have to start CPR and you will rescue him. Thank you for your attention. Be smart, be brave, be with me. See you soon.